The porch boards creaked under the weight of memory. Samuel Crawford, 78 years old and worn smooth by time like riverstone, settled into his chair with the careful movements of a man whose bones had earned their rest. The Arizona sun hung low over the ranch, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. August heat still pressed down even as evening approached, but Sam barely noticed anymore. After 50 years on this land, the heat had become part of him. His grandson sat cross-legged on the wooden planks beside him. Little Sam, 16 years old, and full of questions the way young men always are when they start seeing the world beyond their own reflection. The boy had been quiet all afternoon, studying the old photograph in his hands. The wedding picture, black and white edges, worn soft from too many years in a frame. "Grandpa," the boy said finally, his voice carrying that uncertain tone of someone afraid their question might cause pain. "Why is Grandma so much taller than you in this picture?" Sam felt a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. How many times had he been asked that question over the decades? How many curious stares? How many whispered conversations that stopped when he entered a room? The smile grew wider. "That's a long story, boy." Sam's voice was rough, weathered by age and desert wind. "A story about a lie that became the greatest truth of my life." Little Sam shifted forward, attention caught. Sam recognized that look. He had worn it himself once when his own grandfather spoke of things that seemed impossible, magical, too large for the ordinary world. The old man let his gaze drift past the porch rail over the expanse of land that stretched toward distant mesas. 300 acres now. 300 acres of proof that some lies are worth telling. "It began," Sam said slowly, "the day I walked into a circle of armed warriors and claimed a woman I'd never spoken to." The boy's eyes went wide. Sam closed his own eyes and the years fell away like shed skin. The morning had started ordinary. That was how the most extraordinary days always began, Sam would later realize. No warning, no sign from the heavens. Just another sunrise over Crawford Ranch in the summer of 1878. He had woken alone in the small house as he had every morning for the past 3 years. The bed felt too large. It always did. Elizabeth's side remained cold, untouched, the sheets pulled tight in a way that suggested permanence rather than temporary absence. Sam forced himself not to look at it as he dressed. The house was neat but sparse. A single room serving as bedroom, kitchen, and living space all at once. One table, two chairs, though only one ever bore weight anymore. Shelves carefully arranged to make little seem like enough. In the corner, barely visible in the dawn light filtering through the window, sat a collection of items Sam could not bring himself to pack away. A hairbrush, a shawl folded with precision, a pair of boots sized small gathering dust. He pulled on his work clothes without thought, muscle memory, guiding him through motions his mind no longer needed to track. Outside, the desert was waking. Somewhere a coyote called its last challenge to the fading night. Sam's boots crunched on the hard-packed earth as he walked toward the fence line. The work was endless on a ranch. Fences needed constant repair. The barbed wire, still a relatively new invention, had a tendency to snap under the stress of summer heat and winter cold. Sam had installed it only 2 years prior, part of the never-ending effort to prove continuous improvement of the land. The Homestead Act was clear: 160 acres granted to any citizen willing to work it for 5 consecutive years. Prove you could make the land productive, prove you could survive, and it became yours. Sam was in year 4. One more year, and the land would be his completely. Not government land he borrowed. His, something real, something permanent, something that could not be taken by fever in the night. He worked without speaking. There was no one to speak to. The silence had become comfortable over time, or at least familiar. He told himself he preferred it this way. Alone meant safe. Alone meant no new wounds to carry. The sun climbed higher. Sweat gathered on his brow. Sam wiped it away and reached for another fence post. That was when he saw them. Movement on the eastern ridge. Not the usual hunting party of 3 or 4 men. Dozens of figures moving in formation. 2 distinct groups converging from different directions, their paths aimed at the valley below his ranch. Sam straightened slowly, hand shading his eyes against the glare. Apache. He recognized the way they moved, the spacing of their formation. But this many together was unusual, alarming even. He had traded with the local band for 2 years. Fair dealings, mutual respect, no trouble. They left him alone, and he returned the courtesy. But this gathering suggested something larger than trade. Smoke signals rose in the distance, thin columns against the blue sky carrying messages in a language Sam had never learned to read. He should have returned to his work, should have trusted that whatever business brought the Apache together was none of his concern, should have kept his head down and his hands busy. Instead, his feet carried him toward the ridge. Curiosity, he told himself. Just curiosity, nothing more. But beneath that, something else stirred, a restlessness he had felt growing for months, a sense that his life had become too small, too quiet, too safe in all the wrong ways. Surviving was not the same as living. Elizabeth had taught him that. Her absence reminded him daily. Sam moved carefully through the brush, keeping low. Not hiding exactly, just staying unobtrusive. The gathered Apache came into clearer view as he found a position behind a cluster of boulders overlooking the neutral ground between territories. There were perhaps 40 warriors present, maybe more. Two groups facing each other across a stretch of flat earth. On one side, the band he recognized, familiar faces though he knew few names. On the other side, strangers, harder men, faces marked by sun and scars and something else, desperation maybe, or determination. And in the center, towering above nearly everyone present, stood a woman. Even from a distance, she was impossible to miss. She stood at least 6'3", maybe taller, broad shoulders, arms corded with muscle that spoke of years wielding weapons and tools. Her hair hung long and black down her back, catching sunlight like obsidian. She wore traditional Apache dress, but moved like a warrior. She was magnificent, and she was trapped. Sam could see it in the set of her shoulders, the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes tracked the men circling her with the wariness of a cornered predator. This was not a celebration. This was a confrontation. Across the valley in the Apache village, morning had brought its own tensions. Nalin woke before dawn, as warriors do. The habit was so ingrained she no longer thought about it. Eyes open, mind clear, body ready. She had slept lightly as she always did, attuned to every sound that might signal danger. But this morning something felt wrong. Too many voices outside the dwelling. Too much movement for a normal day. She emerged to find Dakota waiting. Her oldest friend, the only man besides her father who had never treated her height as a curse. He stood near the entrance, his expression grave. "The northern band is here," he said without preamble. "Ahiga has called a gathering." Nalin felt ice form in her stomach. "Why, Baum?" "They say they come to claim what was promised." She stared at him. "Promised what promise?" Dakota's jaw tightened. "Your father's promise, from before he died." The ice spread through her chest. Her father had been dead for 10 years. What promise could reach across a decade and trap her now? "I made no promise," she said, voice hard. "I know." Dakota's hand touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture of support. "But we must go. The elders are already gathering." Inside the dwelling, Kiona was still sleeping. Nalin's younger sister, beautiful in the way Nalin had never been. Delicate, feminine, desired. 3 warriors had already asked to court her, and she was only 18. Nalin did not wake her. No need to pull Kiona into whatever storm was approaching. She dressed quickly, choosing not her finest clothes but her warrior garments. If this was a fight, she would meet it as herself, not as some decorative bride to be bartered like goods. As she walked through the village, she felt eyes on her. Always eyes. Watching, measuring, finding her wanting in ways that had nothing to do with her skills or strength. Too tall, too muscular, too unlike what a woman should be. She had heard the whispers since childhood, had watched potential suitors approach drawn by her prowess in hunting and battle, only to withdraw when their mothers or elders reminded them that a wife should fit properly beneath a man's arm. That children needed mothers who looked like mothers, not like warriors. 5 times men had shown interest. 5 times they had walked away. Nalin had learned to wear the rejection like armor. If she could not be loved, she would be respected. If she could not be desired, she would be feared. But late at night, when the village slept and she lay alone, the armor grew heavy. Dakota fell into step beside her as they walked toward the gathering place. "Whatever happens today," he said quietly, "I stand with you." "You always have," Nalin replied. And it was true. Since they were children, Dakota had been the one constant. The friend who never flinched from her shadow. The neutral ground was already filling with people when they arrived. Nalin's band on one side, the strangers on the other. And in the center, the elders preparing for council. Ahiga stood among them. 68 years old, white-haired, sharp-eyed, the wisest of their people. If anyone could navigate whatever was coming, it would be him. But even Ahiga looked troubled. The northern band's leader stepped forward, a man in his mid-30s, tall and scarred. A jagged line ran from his left cheekbone to his jaw, the kind of wound that spoke of violence survived. His eyes were hard, but not cruel. Tired, Nellen thought. This was a tired man carrying weight he had not chosen. Beside him stood another man older, with the calculating gaze of someone who dealt in words and manipulation rather than weapons. An advisor. And advisors in Nalen's experience were rarely to be trusted. The advisor, who she would later learn was called Apache, carried a rolled leather document. He held it like a weapon. Ahiga raised his hand. The gathered people fell silent. "Why have you come?" Ahiga's voice carried across the space, demanding answer. The scarred warrior Chaitin spoke. His voice was rough but steady. "We come to claim what was promised 10 years ago, an alliance sealed by marriage." Murmurs rippled through both crowds. Nalen felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Marriage. They were talking about marriage. Apache unrolled the document with theatrical precision. "Here," he announced, "is the agreement made between our northern band and this southern band in the year 1868, signed by Nalen's father, witnessed by elders." He held it up for all to see. Even from a distance, Nalen could make out markings, signatures, her father's distinctive mark. The agreement states, Apache continued, that when Nalen reached marriageable age, she would be offered first to our northern band to cement alliance between our peoples. Ahiga stepped forward, examining the document closely. His expression revealed nothing, but Nalen saw his fingers tighten on the leather. "Your father honored our people," Apache said, turning to face Nalen directly. "Will you dishonor his memory by refusing what he promised?" Nalen felt every eye turn to her, the weight of tradition, of expectation, of a dead man's word pressing down like stones. She lifted her chin, met Apache's gaze without flinching. "My father died when I was 16 years old," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the gathering. "He could not have known who I would become, what I would want, what I would choose." "Choice," Apache's lip curled. "Since when do children choose against their father's word? Since those fathers are no longer here to explain what they truly meant," Nalen shot back. Chaitin stepped forward, then cutting off Apache's response. When he spoke, his voice was weary. "I do not come here seeking an unwilling wife, but my people starve. Our hunting grounds have failed. Our alliance with your band would bring trade routes, shared resources, survival for children who have done nothing to deserve hunger." There was pain in his words, real pain. This was not about desire or conquest. This was about desperation. Nalen felt something twist in her chest. How did you refuse a man who was trying to save his people? How did you choose your own freedom when it meant children would go hungry? "I respect your need," she said carefully, "but I will not be the price paid for it. Find another way to build your alliance." "There is no other way," Apache interjected sharply. "The agreement is clear. Honor demands you fulfill it." Ahiga raised his hand again. "This is a grave matter, one that affects more than 2 individuals. We must consider carefully." But Chaitin's warriors were already moving, not attacking, but closing ranks, a subtle shifting that made their message clear. Refuse and there would be consequences. Nalen's hand moved instinctively toward the knife at her belt. Dakota tensed beside her. The air grew tight with the electricity that precedes violence. From his vantage point behind the boulders, Sam watched the confrontation unfold. He understood perhaps 1 word in 3 of the Apache being spoken, but body language needed no translation. The tall woman was being cornered, pressured, forced into something she clearly did not want. He saw her hand move toward her weapon, saw the warriors on both sides preparing for bloodshed, and he saw her face, the fear she was trying so hard to hide beneath anger and pride. He knew that fear. Had worn it himself 3 years ago, watching Elizabeth slip away while he stood helpless. The fear of losing control, of having no choice, of being trapped by circumstances beyond your power to change. Something in Sam's chest cracked open. He did not think. Thinking would have stopped him. Thinking would have reminded him that he was one man unarmed, walking into a gathering of warriors who had no reason to welcome his presence. Thinking would have kept him safe and silent and alone. Instead, he stood. He stepped out from behind the boulders, hands raised to show he carried no weapons. His boots crunched on stone and scrub as he descended toward the gathering. Shouts erupted. Warriors spun toward him, hands flying to knives and rifles. The tall woman's eyes locked on his wide with confusion. She did not know him. He did not know her. But Sam kept walking. The circle of warriors parted, uncertain how to react to this intrusion. Sam walked through them until he stood in the center, in the space between the two bands, in the space where the woman stood surrounded. He looked at Chayton, then at the document the advisor held, then at the woman, and he spoke in his broken, rough Apache the words that would change everything. She has already promised. To me, silence fell like a hammer. Every person present froze. The wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Chayton's face went from surprise to fury in the space of a heartbeat. You lie, white dog. His hand moved to his blade. Sam's knees wanted to buckle. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. But he did not move, did not run, did not take back the lie. He kept his eyes on the woman. She stared at him. Her expression was unreadable. Shock, yes. Confusion, absolutely. But beneath that, something else. Calculation. Assessment. She was measuring him. Deciding. Time stretched. Sam felt every second like a blade against his throat. Then the woman moved. Her hand reached out. Large, callous, strong. It closed around Sam's hand with a grip that could have crushed bone if she chose. She looked down at him from her considerable height. Their eyes met, and she made her choice. He speaks truth, she said, her voice booming across the gathering with absolute authority. Samuel Crawford and I have an understanding. We have been building it for 2 years through trade and trust. The lie hung in the air between them, fragile as spun glass and sharp as broken promises. Chaos erupted. Warriors shouted. Elders demanded explanation. Chayton's face twisted with rage and disbelief. But Sam did not let go of the woman's hand, and she did not let go of his. The noise crashed over them like a wave. Warriors from both bands surging forward, voices raised in protest and confusion. Weapons were not yet drawn, but the threat hummed in the air like heat shimmer. Lies, Apache's voice cut through the din. This white man dares to dishonor our council with his deceit. Chayton's hand remained on his knife knuckles white. His eyes burned into Sam with the promise of violence. No one has witnessed this arrangement. No one has spoken of it. He invents this story to steal what belongs to our people. Ahiga stepped between them, his aged voice carrying unexpected force. Peace, there will be no blood until truth is determined. Sam's throat had gone completely dry. He stood in the center of a circle of armed men, any one of whom could kill him before he took 3 steps. His hand trembled in the woman's grip, but she held steady, anchoring him, keeping him upright when every instinct screamed to run. Samuel Crawford, Ahiga said, turning his sharp gaze on Sam, you make a serious claim in front of witnesses, before the spirits of our ancestors. Do you understand what this means? Sam swallowed hard. Yes. Then you understand that lies told in sacred council bring consequences, for you and for her. The weight of that settled on Sam's shoulders. He had not just put himself at risk, he had bound this woman to his lie. If it fell apart, she would face punishment alongside him. What had he done? But before he could speak, before he could take it back or explain or apologize, another voice rang out. I can confirm what he says. All eyes turned. Martha Crawford pushed through the gathered crowd. She was 55 years old, a widow who owned the neighboring ranch. She had been Sam's only friend since Elizabeth died, the only person who still visited his isolated home. She must have followed him when she saw him leaving his work to observe the gathering. Martha had always been protective. Nosy, some said. Sam called it caring. She walked with the confidence of a woman who had survived 2 husbands and a frontier that killed most who challenged it. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Her dress was dusty from travel. I have seen them trade, Martha announced to the council, multiple times over the past 2 years. Samuel Crawford and this woman. I witnessed their dealings myself. It was not entirely a lie. Martha had seen Nayland at Sam's ranch once, maybe twice, bringing goods to trade. But Martha was stretching the truth into shapes that barely held together. Sam felt a rush of gratitude and terror in equal measure. Ahiga studied Martha with the same piercing attention he had given Sam. You witnessed courtship and arrangement between them. Martha did not hesitate. I witnessed respect, fair dealing, the kind of foundation that matters more than flowery words. Inape stepped forward, and his face twisted with suspicion. One white woman vouches for another white. This proves nothing. It proves, Ahiga said quietly, that this claim has some foundation in truth. Whether that foundation is strong enough to stand is what we must determine. He turned to address the entire gathering. This is unprecedented. A claim and a counterclaim, both with weight, both with consequences that reach beyond two individuals. Chaitin's jaw worked. His desperation was palpable. My people need this alliance. The document is clear. And this man's claim precedes your document if his words are true, Ahiga countered. The tension pulled tighter. Sam could feel violence hovering at the edge of possibility. All it would take was one wrong word, one sudden movement, and blood would flow. Ahiga made his decision. You have until sunset, he said, his voice cutting through the noise with finality. Samuel Crawford, Nayland, you will bring proof of your arrangement. Witnesses, evidence, something more than words. He looked at both of them with an expression that might have been sympathy. If your claim is true, it will stand. If it is false, you both will face consequences for dishonoring this council. Both bands, all the spirits watching. The weight of those words settled like stone. Sam's mind raced. Proof. What proof could they possibly provide for an arrangement that did not exist? And you, Ahiga said, turning to Chaitin, your people may remain. The council will reconvene at sunset. No violence until then. That is my command as elder. Chaitin looked like he wanted to argue, but tradition bound him. An elder's word in council was law. He gave a sharp nod. Inape's expression promised that this was far from over. Ahiga gestured towards Sam and Nayland. You may go. Prepare your proof. Dakota will accompany you to ensure there is no deception in your preparations. Dakota stepped forward from where he had stood, watching the entire exchange with an unreadable expression. He was perhaps 27, lean and muscular, with eyes that missed nothing. Come, Dakota said, his voice neutral. We have much to discuss before sunset. The walk to Sam's ranch happened in stages of silence. At first they moved through the dispersing crowd. Eyes tracked them. Whispers followed like smoke. Sam kept his head down, acutely aware of how small he looked beside Nolitan. She towered over him by nearly 8 inches. Her shadow swallowed his completely. Once they cleared the gathering, the three of them walked in single file. Dakota brought up the rear, watchful. Nayland walked slightly ahead of Sam, her stride long and purposeful. Sam struggled to keep pace. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat soaked through Sam's shirt. He wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize, to ask what they were going to do. But his throat felt closed. It was Nayland who finally broke the silence. Why did you do that? Her voice was low, meant only for him. Sam did not have a good answer. I saw you surrounded, trapped. So you trapped yourself alongside me. There was no anger in her words, just genuine curiosity. I could not watch someone be forced into a life they did not want. The words came out rough. Not when I could do something to stop it. Nayland was quiet for several steps, then softer. You do not know me. I could be cruel, dishonest, unworthy of your risk. Maybe, Sam admitted, but in that moment I saw your eyes, and I recognized what I saw there. What did you see? Someone fighting to stay free while the world closed in. Silence again, but this time it felt different, less hostile, more thoughtful. They crested the final rise and Sam's ranch came into view. Even after 4 years of work, it still looked worn. The house was small, barely more than a cabin. The roof slanted slightly to one side, a problem Sam kept meaning to fix. The corral fence leaned at an angle that suggested it was held up more by habit than structure. 160 acres of hard earth, stubborn grass, and constant labor. Home. Nayland studied it as they approached. Sam wondered what she saw. Poverty, probably. Evidence of a man barely surviving rather than thriving. But when she spoke, her words surprised him. You work this land alone? Yes. That is hard, respected. Dakota made a sound that might have been agreement. Inside the house revealed its emptiness immediately. One bed neatly made. One table with two chairs facing each other across scarred wood. Shelves holding precisely arranged supplies, the kind of order that suggested someone trying to maintain control over a life that felt perpetually on the edge of chaos. And in the corner, the collection Sam had not touched in 3 years. Nalen's eyes went to it immediately. The hairbrush, the shawl, the small boots. Your wife, she said. Not a question. Sam nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. How long? 3 years. I am sorry. The simple words spoken with genuine compassion threatened to undo him. Sam turned away, busying himself with lighting the lamp, even though there was still plenty of daylight. Dakota shut the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. We have a problem, he said bluntly. Several problems, Nalin corrected. We have no proof, Dakota continued. No witnesses to courtship, no gifts exchanged, no story that will hold under questioning. Sam forced himself to focus. Then we build one. We have a few hours. If we get the details right, maybe they will believe us. They will look for cracks, Dakota warned. Apache will push every weakness. If he finds inconsistency, he will expose it. Then we make sure there are no inconsistencies. Sam moved to the table, pulled out a chair for Nalin. She hesitated, then sat. Even seated, she was nearly as tall as Sam standing. He took the other chair. Dakota remained by the door, watchful. Tell me, Sam said, looking at Nalin, everything you remember about the times we actually did trade. Her eyes widened slightly. You remember every time. Sam pulled a ledger from the shelf, the careful record book he maintained for the Homestead Act requirements. He opened it, flipped through pages of neat entries. Here, he said, pointing, Spring 1876, 3 deer hides traded for 2 pounds coffee, 1 pound sugar, 1 pound salt. Nalen leaned forward, staring at the entry. You kept record of this. I keep records of everything. The Homestead Act requires proof of economic activity. Trading with native bands counts as commerce. He turned more pages. Fall 1876, 5 rabbit pelts traded for winter supplies. And here, winter 1877. Veterinary work, no charge for an injured mare. Nellen's hand moved to her mouth. You remember that, my horse? She was beautiful. A paint, if I recall. Broken leg. I set the bone, made a splint. Took 3 hours. She lived, Nalen said softly. She still lives, because of you. Dakota pushed off from the door, moving closer to examine the ledger. His expression shifted from suspicion to something like respect. This is good. This gives foundation. But we need more than trades, Sam said. We need a story of how those trades became something deeper. So they built it, piece by piece, detail by detail, taking the skeleton of truth and adding flesh that was part invention, part hope, part desperate necessity. The first trade, spring 1876. Nellen had come with 3 warriors. Sam had given extra sugar. Because he had noticed she smiled when she tasted it. A small detail, but believable. Human. The second trade, fall, Sam had given more supplies than the pelts were worth. Why? Because winter was coming and he could see her people would need help. Not charity. Respect. The third meeting, the horse with the broken leg. This became the turning point in their story, the moment when respect became something more. I will say, Nalin offered, that when you refused payment for saving my horse, I understood your character, that you valued life over profit. And I will say, Sam continued, that watching you care for that injured animal, the gentleness you showed despite your strength, that is when I began to see you as more than a trading partner. It felt dangerously close to truth as they spoke it. They worked through the timeline, adding meetings that may or may not have happened, conversations that definitely did not occur, moments of connection built from hope and necessity. An hour passed, then another. The story took shape, became solid, almost believable. But there was still the problem of physical proof. Apache marriage customs require gift exchange, Dakota said. What did you give her? What did she give you? Silence fell. They had no gifts, no tokens, no physical evidence of a courtship that had never happened. Sam's eyes drifted to the corner. to the shawl. No, Nayland said immediately following his gaze. That is sacred to your wife's memory. Elizabeth would want this, Sam said quietly. She hated injustice, hated seeing people trapped. If she knew what was happening, she would want me to use it. We could use something else, Dakota suggested. A blanket, a tool, anything. But Sam shook his head. The shawl was the only item in his possession that carried real emotional weight, the only thing that would feel authentic under scrutiny. What if, the idea as he spoke, Nolan gave it to me? Not as a gift of courtship initially, but as something else, something that became meaningful later. Nolan frowned. What do you mean? Sam stood moved to the corner, picked up the shawl. The fabric felt impossibly light in his hands. He had not touched it since the day Martha had washed and folded it after Elizabeth's burial. Last winter, he began the story forming as he spoke. When grief was heaviest, Nayland visited. She found me unable to let go of this shawl, unable to move forward. He looked at Nolan. You asked to borrow it, to take it to your shaman for a blessing ceremony, to help Elizabeth's spirit move on and help mine heal. Understanding dawned in Nolan's eyes. And I returned it the next day, told you that your wife's spirit now blessed your future instead of chaining you to the past. I tried to give it back to you, Sam continued, said you keep it, as a reminder that grief can heal. But I kept it only briefly. Nayland picked up the thread, then returned it, saying it belonged with you. But so did I. Dakota was nodding slowly. That story has layers, emotional truth. It could work, but there was still a problem. We need a witness, Sam said. Someone who interrupted them. All three tensed. Dakota's hand moved to his knife. Sam crossed to the door, opened it carefully. Martha Crawford stood on the threshold, a basket of food in her hands. I thought you might need this, she said, pushing past Sam into the house. She set the basket on the table, then turned to survey the scene. Sam at the table with Nayland, Dakota standing guard, the open ledger, the shawl in Sam's hands. Good Lord, Samuel, Martha said. What have you gotten yourself into, Sam explained. Everything. The lie, the need for proof, the story they were building. Martha listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat down heavily in the chair he had vacated. You are either the bravest fool I have ever met, she said, or the most foolish, brave man. Probably both, Sam admitted. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Nayland, really looked at her. Studied her face, her bearing, the way she held herself with warrior's pride, despite the fear Sam could see hiding in her eyes. I will testify, Martha said finally. I will say I witnessed your winter meeting, that I saw Nayland bring the shawl back, that I have watched your connection grow over 2 years. That is a lie, Nayland said quietly. Is it? Martha met her gaze steadily. I have seen you trade with Sam. I have seen the way you look at each other even now when you barely know each other. Maybe I am just testifying to what I see instead of what has been. Sam felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or something more dangerous. Before anyone could respond, Nayland suddenly went rigid. Her head turned toward the window. What is it? Sam asked. We are being watched, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Do not turn around. Do not react. Dakota moved casually toward the other window, glanced out as if simply checking the weather. His jaw tightened. Scout, he confirmed. On the ridge east of here, Chayton sent someone to observe. Sam's stomach dropped. How long has he been there? Long enough, Dakota said grimly. He saw us enter together. He has been watching us plan. This was disaster. If the scout reported that they spent hours inside building a story, preparing testimony, their lie would be exposed before they even reached the council. What do we do? Sam asked. Nolan stood, moved closer to the window, but did not look out. We give him something real to see. She turned to Sam. Come here. Sam approached cautiously. Nolan sat back down, then gestured for Sam to sit beside her. Close beside her. He did, acutely aware of her physical presence, the warmth radiating from her skin, the smell of leather and sage, the way her arm brushed his as she shifted position. If we are building an arrangement, she said quietly, we need to look comfortable together, like this is natural. Martha, understanding, began unpacking the food she had brought. You two talk, relax, act like people who have known each other for 2 years. It should have been impossible. They were strangers. The whole situation was absurd. But something about sitting close to Naylin, about the warmth of her presence and the steady calm she projected, made it easier than Sam expected. He began to talk, not about the lie or the plan or the council, about his ranch, his daily routine, the stubborn mule he used for plowing, the well he had dug that took 3 weeks because he kept hitting rock. Nalin listened. Then she began to share. Small things. The way morning looked from the hills above her village, her sister's wedding preparations, the hunt she had led last month that brought down an elk large enough to feed 30 people. Their conversation found a rhythm, natural, real. The scout on the ridge watched, saw two people sitting close talking easily, occasionally laughing, saw Martha moving around the small house like she belonged there, comfortable with both of them, saw something that looked from a distance exactly like what they claimed it was. An hour passed this way, maybe more. Sam lost track of time. When Nalin finally stood stretching her long frame, the sun had moved considerably across the sky. They had perhaps 3 hours until sunset, 3 hours until they had to face the council with their carefully constructed story and their fragile proof. "We should prepare to leave," Dakota said. Sam nodded. He moved to gather what they would need. The ledger, Martha's presence as witness. Nayland caught his arm as he passed. Her hand was warm, strong, gentle. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for trying to save me. Whatever happens now, that meant something." Sam looked up at her, met her dark eyes, saw uncertainty there and fear and something that might have been hope. "We will make this work," he said with more confidence than he felt. Her lips curved in the smallest smile. "We will try that." Outside, the sun continued its descent toward the horizon. Time was running out. But as Sam prepared to walk back into the circle of warriors, back into the lie that might save them or destroy them both, he realized something had changed. The lie no longer felt entirely like a lie. Something real had begun to grow in the spaces between the invented words. Something fragile and new and terrifying. He looked at Nalin. She looked back. And in that moment, Sam understood that whatever happened at the council, whatever judgment came at sunset, his life had already changed irrevocably. The lie had been told. The die cast. Now they would discover what truth could be built from such a foundation. Together. The light in the small house had shifted. Afternoon sun slanted through the western window, painting everything in shades of amber. Martha had returned to her own ranch, promising to meet them at the council ground. Dakota had stepped outside to give them privacy, or perhaps to keep watch for more scouts. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt final. Sam and Nayland sat across from each other at the scarred wooden table. The ledger lay between them, proof of transactions but not of connection. The shawl rested in Sam's hands, soft and heavy with memory. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable exactly, but it carried weight. They were about to cross a threshold. Once certain truths were spoken, they could not be unspoken. Once certain doors were open, they could not be closed again. Nalin broke the silence first. "If I am to use your wife's shawl," she said carefully, "if I am to tell the council that I blessed it and returned it to you, then I should know who she was, what she meant. Otherwise, I dishonor her memory with my lies." Sam's throat tightened. He had not spoken Elizabeth's name aloud in months, had not told her story to anyone since the day Martha helped him bury her. The words felt locked behind walls he had built intentionally carefully to keep the pain contained. But Nalin was right. If they were going to do this, they needed to do it with as much truth as they could manage. "Her name was Elizabeth," Sam began. His voice came out rough, unused to forming these particular words. "Everyone called her Lizzie, except me. I always used her full name. She said it made her feel important." He stared at the shawl in his hands, seeing not the fabric, but the woman who had worn it. "We met at a trading post in Tucson, 1871. I had come to buy supplies. She worked there helping her uncle who owned the place." The memory rose unbidden. Lizzie behind the counter, flour dusting her apron, her hair escaping its pins and wild curls. Sam, tired from weeks of travel, barely paying attention as he listed what he needed. "She spilled flour on my boots," Sam said, and despite everything, he felt his lips curve slightly. "A whole bag. It went everywhere, all over the floor, all over me, clouds of white dust settling on everything." He could still see it. the horror on her face as she realized what she had done. Then instead of apologizing, instead of panicking, she had started laughing. Great peals of laughter that filled the entire trading post, so infectious that Sam found himself laughing too, even covered in flour. Her laugh, Sam said quietly, it filled the whole room, made everything brighter. I asked her to dinner that same night. Nayland listened without interrupting. Her dark eyes were fixed on his face, patient and attentive. We married 3 months later. Fast, I know. But when you find something real, you know it. At least I thought I did. They had bought this land together under the Homestead Act, 160 acres of government land granted to anyone willing to work it. 5 years of continuous occupation and improvement, and it would be theirs completely. A foundation for a future. A place to build the family Lizzie wanted so desperately. She wanted 6 children, Sam said. The words came easier now, as if speaking had opened a valve. 6. I told her we should start with 1 and see how it went. She said nonsense, we needed a big family. Lots of noise and case and love. They had built the house together, small but sturdy. Sam did the heavy work, the framing and roofing. Lizzie did the finishing, making it a home instead of just a shelter. She planted flowers around the door, even though the desert fought her at every turn. She hung curtains. She filled the shelves with preserves and dried herbs and all the small touches that made a house breathe. We tried for children right away, Sam continued. His voice had gone flat now, mechanical. This was the hard part. She got pregnant in the first year. We were so happy. Started planning names, building a cradle, imagining who they would be. 4 months in, Lizzie had woken in the night, crying out in pain. Blood on the sheets. Sam had ridden 20 miles for the nearest doctor, but by the time they returned, it was over. Miscarriage, Sam said. The word still felt like broken glass. The doctor said it happens, said we could try again. So we did. The second pregnancy came a year later. This time they were cautious, careful. Lizzie rested more, worked less. They barely spoke about it, as if not naming their hope would protect it. The baby was stillborn, a boy, perfect in every way except that he did not breathe. They buried him behind the house, Sam said, under a cottonwood tree. Lizzie would sit there for hours just sitting, not crying, just sitting. But she had been determined to try again. Her grief transformed into fierce resolve. They would have their family. They would fill this house with children and laughter and life. Except that was when the fever came. 1875, Sam said. June, middle of summer, hot as hell. She complained of a headache one morning. By evening, she was burning up. Scarlet fever, the doctor said when he finally arrived 2 days later. Nothing to be done. Keep her cool, keep her hydrated, pray. Sam had done all of it. Bathed her with cold water. Forced liquid between her cracked lips, prayed to a God he was no longer sure was listening. The fever burned at 105 degrees, Sam said. The clinical detail felt safer than emotion. The doctor said her brain was cooking. That was the word he used, cooking. Lizzie had been delirious for most of it, speaking to people who were not there, crying out for her mother who had died years before. Sometimes she seemed lucid, would focus on Sam's face and smile like she recognized him. Then the fog would return. She was lucid at the end, Sam said, his hands clenched on the shawl. For about an hour, long enough to know she was dying, long enough to say goodbye. The last words, Sam carried them like stones. She made me promise not to stop living. Those were her exact words. Don't stop living, Samuel. Promise me. And I promised. Lizzie had died at sunset. Sam held her through the night, unable to let go, unable to accept that the warmth was leaving her body, that she was becoming just a thing instead of a person. Martha had found them the next morning, Sam still holding Lizzie, unwilling to release her to the ground. Martha had been gentle but firm, had helped him wash the body, dress it properly, had taken Lizzie away for burial while Sam sat numbly in the empty house. I wrapped her in this shawl, Sam said, lifting the fabric slightly. She wore it on our wedding day. It seemed right that she wear it to her grave. But Martha had saved it, washed it, folded it, returned it to Sam with the quiet insistence that Lizzie would not want him to bury all memory of joy. I have not touched it since, Sam finished. Until today. The silence that followed was profound. Sam felt emptied out, hollowed. He had not realized how much those words had weighed until he released them. Nalen's eyes were wet. Tears tracked silently down her face, but she made no sound. Her grief was quiet, respectful. She was blessed, Nalin said finally, her voice thick, to be loved like that. I was blessed to love her, Sam replied. And now you offer her memory to save a stranger. Not to save a stranger, to honor what she would have wanted. Lizzie hated injustice, hated seeing people trapped or forced. If she knew what was happening to you, she would insist I use this shawl. She would be angry if I did not. Nalin reached across the table. Her large hand covered both of Sam's where they gripped the shawl. The touch was warm, grounding. Then I will honor it, she said. And her. I promise you that. Sam nodded, not trusting his voice. Now, Nalin said gently, it is my turn. If you shared your pain, I should share mine. She withdrew her hand, sat back. Her posture straightened into the warrior stance Sam was beginning to recognize. Preparing for battle, even if the battle was only with memory. You asked why a warrior like me fears marriage. Nalin began. The answer is simple. I do not fear marriage. I fear rejection. And I have been rejected so many times that I learned to reject first. She had been born normal, she explained. Average size, average weight. Her mother had rejoiced at having a daughter after 3 sons who had all died in raids or sickness. Finally, a daughter to teach the women's crafts. Finally, a daughter to carry on traditions. But Nalin had grown. By 10 years old, I was as tall as my mother. By 12, I was taller than most women in the village. By 14, I was 6 feet tall and still growing. The Apache valued many things in women: skill at weaving, ability to prepare hides, knowledge of healing herbs. Beauty was appreciated but not essential. What mattered was fitting the role, fulfilling the function. A woman who stood 6'3" did not fit. The boys my age were intimidated, Nalin said. Her voice was flat, reciting facts. They would practice with me in weapons training because I was good, better than them often, but they would not court me. Their mothers forbade it. At 17, hope had arrived in an unexpected form. A young warrior named Strong Bear had approached her, not to mock or challenge, but to express genuine interest. He was tall himself, nearly 6 feet. He said her height did not bother him. He said she was magnificent. Nalin's mother had been overjoyed. Finally, her strange daughter would marry and settle into proper life. The courtship had lasted 2 months. Strong Bear had been attentive, respectful, had brought gifts, had spoken of a future together. Nalin had allowed herself to hope, to imagine a life where she was not alone. Then Strong Bear's mother had intervened. She told him I was cursed, Nalin said. The words were bitter, that I would birth giant children, that the spirits had marked me as unnatural, that marrying me would bring shame to his family. Strong Bear had tried to argue, had insisted he did not care what others thought. But tradition was strong, maternal authority stronger. In the end, he had withdrawn his courtship, had apologized, had walked away. That was the worst, Nalin said quietly. Mother first rejection, but the one that taught me rejection always comes eventually. There had been 4 more over the following 9 years. Each time a warrior would approach, drawn by her strength and skill. Each time hope would kindle. Each time family or elders or tradition would intervene. The reasons varied, Nalin said. Too tall, too masculine, too strong, would not make proper wife, would overshadow husband, would birth abnormal children. Always something. She had learned to deflect interest before it became serious, had built walls of warrior's pride and fierce independence. If she could not be wanted as a wife, she would be respected as a warrior. If she could not be loved, she would be feared. I became the best, Nalin said with quiet pride. Best archer, best tracker, best fighter. I could take down an elk at 200 yards, could track a man for 3 days without losing the trail, could fight multiple opponents and win. The band had valued her skills, had relied on her in hunts and conflicts, had given her status and respect. But respect was cold comfort in the long nights. My sister Kiona, Nalin said, and for the first time real pain crept into her voice. She is everything I am not. Small, delicate, beautiful in the way women are supposed to be beautiful. She had 3 marriage proposals before she turned 18. Nalin loved her sister, genuinely, without resentment. But watching Kiona move through life with ease, watching men compete for her attention, watching their mother beam with pride, it carved something hollow in Nalin's chest. I am the guardian, Nalin said. Kiona is the treasure. That is how it has always been. When Chaitin's delegation had arrived with their document, their demands, their claim on her future, Nalin's first reaction had been fury. Another man trying to claim her. Another situation where she had no choice. But then I saw Chaitin's face, Nalin admitted, and I realized he did not want me. He needed me. There is a difference. He needed my strength to cement alliance, needed my warrior status to bring credibility to the Union. I was useful, not desired, useful. It was the final insult, to be forced into marriage, not because she was wanted, but because she was convenient. I was going to refuse, Nalin said, even knowing it might mean war, even knowing my people would suffer. I was going to choose freedom over duty. Her eyes met Sam's directly. Then you appeared, small, scared, stepping into a circle of armed warriors with nothing but a lion courage. And I saw something I had never seen before. What? Sam asked. A man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose doing the right thing anyway. That is when I knew courage is not about size or strength. It is about choice, and you chose to help me when you did not have to. Nalin's hand reached across the table again. This time Sam met it halfway. Their fingers intertwined, her large hand completely enveloping his smaller one. So I chose you back, Nalin said. Not because I had to, because in that moment I wanted to. I wanted to see what kind of life could be built with a man like that. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Before either could speak again, the door opened. Dakota stepped inside, his expression troubled. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Sam and Nalin separated quickly, though not quickly enough to hide what had clearly been an intimate moment. Dakota's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing about it. Chaitin's scout left 20 minutes ago, Dakota said. He rode hard toward the council ground. Whatever he saw here, he is reporting now. Sam's stomach dropped. Will he tell them we were building a story? He will tell them what he saw, Dakota said. 2 people talking closely, holding hands, Martha moving through the house comfortably. It could support your claim, or it could reveal you were preparing testimony. It depends on what Apache wants him to have seen, Nalin said grimly. Dakota nodded. Apache is dangerous, more dangerous than Chaitin. I need you to understand that. He pulled out the remaining chair, sat heavily. Chaitin is not a villain, Dakota said. He is a desperate man. His first wife died in childbirth 5 years ago. The child died too. A son. Sam had not known this. The information reframed everything about Chaitin's bearing his weariness. Chaitin loved her, Dakota continued. Truly loved her. When she died, something in him broke. He became hard, focused only on duty and survival. The Northern Band had been struggling for 2 years. Drought had shifted game patterns. Traditional hunting grounds were failing. Children were going hungry. Apache is Chaitin's advisor, Dakota said. But Apache cares nothing for Chaitin's grief or his people's hunger. Apache wants power. He saw Chaitin's desperation and used it. According to Dakota's sources within the Northern Band, Apache had been the one to find the old document, had been the one to convince Chaitin that marriage to Nalin was the only path to alliance. I think, Dakota said carefully, that Apache altered the document. I think Nalin's father never made such a binding promise, but proving that will be difficult. Why would Apache do this, Sam asked. Because successful alliance through marriage would make him indispensable, Dakota explained. He would be the architect of peace, his influence would grow. And if alliance failed, if war came, he would push Chaitin aside and seize leadership himself. Either way, Apache wins. Nalin's jaw tightened. So Chaitin is a pawn, like me. Yes, Dakota confirmed, which means if we can expose Apache's manipulation, we might free both of you. Chaitin wants alliance, not you specifically. If another path exists, he would take it. But first we survive the council, Sam said. First we survive the council. Dakota agreed. He looked at the shawl still resting on the table. You are really going to use that? We do not have another option, Sam said. Actually, Dakota said slowly, I have something that might help. He reached into the pouch at his belt, withdrew a small object wrapped in soft leather. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a delicate bracelet woven from what appeared to be horsehair. I was there, Dakota said, when Nalin saved her injured mare. I helped her nurse the horse back to health, and when the horse's tail needed to be trimmed, I kept some of the hair. He held up the bracelet. I made this last year, meant to give it to Nalin as a reminder of that time, but I never found the right moment. Nalin stared at the bracelet, then at Dakota. You made this for me. For you, Dakota confirmed, and now it becomes evidence. Sam, you can say Nalin gave you this bracelet last spring, made from her horse's tail, a symbol of the life you saved together. It was perfect. The bracelet was clearly old enough, worn enough to have existed for months. It connected to a real event they could both describe accurately, and it gave them physical proof beyond the shawl. Why are you helping us? Sam asked quietly. Dakota looked at Nalin with an expression of deep affection. Because she deserves choice. Because I have watched her be rejected and dismissed her entire life. Because she is my oldest friend and I want her to be happy. He turned to Sam. And because I see how you look at her, like she is not too much but exactly right. That is rare, worth protecting. Sam felt heat rise in his face but did not look away. Thank you, Nalin said, her voice thick with emotion. Dakota stood. We should prepare to leave. Sunset approaches. The three of them gathered what they needed. Sam wrapped the shawl carefully in clean cloth, tucked the bracelet into his pocket, collected the ledger with its documented trades. As they prepared to step outside, Nalin caught Sam's arm. Whatever happens, she said, know that your courage today mattered. Win or lose, that mattered. Sam looked up at her, at the strong line of her jaw, the dark eyes that had seen too much rejection, the proud bearing that hid such deep loneliness. We are going to win, he said with more confidence than he felt. Her smile was small but genuine. They stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The heat had peaked and was beginning its slow decline toward evening. Shadows stretched long across the hard-packed earth. Martha was waiting with 3 horses. She had brought mounts for all of them. I thought you might need these, she said. The council ground is 2 miles. Best not to arrive on foot and sweating. They mounted. Sam was not an excellent rider, but he managed. Nalin moved with the natural grace of someone who had grown up with horses. Dakota rode with the ease of a warrior born in the saddle. As they rode, the landscape shifted around them. Desert scrub gave way to rocky outcroppings. The path wound between redstone formations carved by millennia of wind and rare rain. The beauty of the land struck Sam as it often did, harsh and unforgiving, but magnificent in its own way. In the distance, smoke rose from multiple fires. The council ground. Both bands would be gathering now, setting up for the evening's judgment. There will be many people, Dakota said. More than this morning. Word is spread. Everyone wants to see how this ends. Sam's hands tightened on the reins. His horse, sensing tension, tossed its head. Easy, Nalin murmured, though Sam was not sure if she spoke to him or the animal. As they crested the final rise, the full scope of the gathering came into view. Sam's breath caught. There had to be 100 people, maybe more. Warriors standing in organized ranks. Women and children clustered in family groups. Elders seated in a place of honor near the central fire pit, all of them waiting. Half the territory is here, Martha muttered. They all want to see this. They rode down the slope in single file. Sam felt every eye turn toward them. The weight of that collective attention pressed down like a physical force. Near the fire, he could see a Higa in conversation with other elders. Chaitin stood apart, his scarred face unreadable. And Nape hovered nearby, speaking rapidly to anyone who would listen. As they approached, a young woman broke from the crowd and ran toward them. She was small, delicate, beautiful in a way that made Sam understand immediately who she must be. Sister, she called. Is it true, the White Rancher? Kiona reached Nalin's horse, looked up at her older sister with eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been hope. It is true, Nalin said firmly. Kiona studied Sam with frank curiosity. He felt assessed, judged, measured against whatever standard she held. Then unexpectedly, she smiled. Then I stand with you, Kiona said. She turned to face the gathered crowd, her small frame radiating defiance. My sister has chosen. I support her choice. It was a small thing, one person's support, but it mattered. Sam saw Nalan's shoulders straighten, saw strength flow back into her bearing. They dismounted. Dakota took the horses. Martha moved to stand nearby, ready to testify when called. Sam and Nalan walked together toward the center of the gathering, toward the judgment circle where their carefully constructed lies would be tested against skepticism and tradition in Enepe's manipulation. Sam's heart hammered so hard he wondered if others could hear it. His palms were slick with sweat. Every instinct streamed to run, to flee, to escape before the lie collapsed and dragged him down. But Nalan's hand found his, large and warm and steady. She did not speak, but the pressure of her grip said everything. "We face this together." They stepped into the circle. The crowd fell silent. Even the children stopped their playing. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the whisper of wind through the surrounding stones. Ahiga stood. His weathered face showed nothing, but his eyes were sharp as flint. "Samuel Crawford," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled people. "Nalan, you return at the appointed hour. Have you brought proof of your arrangement?" Sam's mouth was dry as dust. He swallowed, forced himself to speak. "We have." "Then present it. Let the council judge truth from lies. Let the spirits guide our wisdom." Sam reached into his pocket, felt the bracelet there, felt the weight of what came next. This was it, the moment everything balanced on. Success or failure, freedom or consequences. He looked at Nalan. She looked back. In her eyes he saw fear and courage mixed in equal measure. Together, they thought. "We do this together." And they began. The fire at the center of the circle burned higher as the sun descended. Someone had added fresh wood, and flames leaped toward the darkening sky, casting dancing shadows across the faces of those gathered. Sam stood in that circle of firelight with Nalan beside him, surrounded by more people than he had seen assembled in one place since coming to the territory. The silence was absolute. Not the peaceful quiet of a desert evening, but the tense hush of 100 people holding their breath, waiting for truth or lies to be revealed. Ahiga stood near the fire, his white hair seeming to glow in the flickering light. The other elders sat in a semicircle behind him, their faces carved from stone and shadow. To the left, Nalan's band, familiar faces though Sam knew few names. Dakota stood among them, arms crossed, watching. Kiona had moved to the front, her small frame radiating defiant support. To the right, the northern band, strangers every one, warriors who had traveled far, driven by hunger and desperation. And at their center, Chaitin. His scarred face caught the firelight, making the long mark from cheek to jaw look like a crack in granite. Beside Chaitin stood Enepe. The advisor's expression was calculating, predatory. He reminded Sam of the coyotes that circled his ranch at night, waiting for weakness for the moment to strike. Ahiga raised both hands. The gesture commanded absolute attention. "We are gathered in sacred council," he began, his voice carrying to every person present. "What is spoken here is witnessed not only by those assembled, but by the spirits of our ancestors, by the earth beneath our feet, by the sky above our heads." He paused, letting the weight of that settle. "Two claims have been made, both serious, both with consequences that reach beyond the individuals involved. Chaitin of the Northern Band claims marriage rights based on a promise made 10 years ago. Samuel Crawford and Nalan claim an existing arrangement that precedes this promise. Ahiga's sharp eyes moved between the two parties. Truth must be determined. Not the truth we wish for, but the truth that is. We begin." He gestured to Chaitin. "The Northern Band may present their case first." Enepe stepped forward, immediately clearly eager. He carried the rolled document like a trophy, his movements theatrical. "Honored elders," he began, his voice pitched to carry, "what we bring is not merely words or testimony, but written proof, legal binding proof." He unrolled the document with practiced flourish. The leather was old, darkened with age, the writing visible even from a distance. "This agreement was made in the year 1868. Enepe continued. 10 years ago, when wisdom guided both our bands, Nalan's father, a great warrior and leader, understood the value of alliance between our peoples. He held the document higher. Here is his mark. Here are the witness marks of elders from both bands. Here is the promise written clearly. When his daughter Nalan reaches marriageable age, she will be offered first to our Northern Band to cement alliance and ensure peace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others frowned. Sam saw several elders lean forward, studying the document from a distance. Enape was not finished. "This is not a casual promise," he declared. "This is blood oath, sacred contract between peoples. To refuse such a promise is to dishonor the dead, to spit on the memory of a father who thought only of his people's future." Sam felt Nayland tense beside him. Her jaw was tight, her hands clenched into fists. "Furthermore," Enape said, his voice rising, "we have evidence that this white man's claim is recent invention, convenient fabrication to avoid honored tradition." He gestured dramatically toward Sam. "No one has witnessed courtship between them. No one has spoken of this arrangement before today. It appears only when another claim threatens to succeed. Is this not suspicious? Is this not obvious deception?" The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Sam felt the tide of opinion shifting against them. Then Chayton stepped forward and Enape fell silent. The scarred warrior did not speak immediately. He stood in the firelight, his expression tired rather than angry. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough but steady. "I do not come here seeking unwilling wife," Chayton said quietly. "I want that understood." The crowd hushed again, surprised by this admission. "I come because my people are desperate. We face starvation. Our hunting grounds have failed us for 2 years. Children go to sleep hungry every night. Elders waste away. We are dying slowly." His honesty was brutal, raw. Sam saw pain carved into every line of Chayton's face. "This alliance," Chayton continued, "would bring trade routes, shared hunting grounds, resources to keep our children alive. I do not claim Nalan because I desire her, though she is worthy of desire. I claim her because I am trying to save my people from extinction." He looked directly at Nalan. "If there was another way, I would take it. But I see no other path. The document is real. The promise was made. Honor binds us to fulfill it." The words fell into heavy silence. This was not the speech of a villain. This was a man trapped by circumstance, by responsibility, by the weight of too many lives depending on his choices. Sam felt something shift in his understanding. Chayton was not the enemy. Desperation was the enemy. Hunger was the enemy. The cruel mathematics of survival that forced impossible choices. Ahiga nodded slowly. "Your honesty is noted and respected, Chayton. The burden you carry is clear." He turned to Sam and Nalan. "Now, Samuel Crawford, Nalan, present your case. Speak truth, for the spirits are listening." Sam's heart hammered. His mouth was dry. This was it, the moment they had been building toward. But Nalan spoke first. She stepped forward, her tall frame catching firelight and transforming into something almost otherworldly. When she spoke, her voice was calm, clear, carrying across the gathered people with absolute authority. "I will tell you how this began," she said. "Not with grand promises or signed documents, but with simple trade, with respect given and received." She gestured towards Sam without looking at him, keeping her eyes on the council. "Spring 1876, I came to Samuel Crawford's ranch with 3 warriors. We brought deer hides. He traded fairly, 2 pounds of coffee, 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of salt." The specifics grounded her story, made it real. "But he gave extra sugar. When I asked why, he said nothing, just smiled slightly and turned away. I learned later from his neighbor that he had seen me taste sugar before, had noticed that I liked it. Such a small thing, but it showed he paid attention, that he saw me as a person, not just as a trader." Sam felt heat rise in his face. The detail was invented, but the way Nalan spoke, it made it feel true. "Fall 1876, I returned with rabbit pelts. 5 pelts for winter supplies. He gave more than the trader was worth. I protested. He said winter would be hard, take what I needed." Nalan's voice softened slightly. "I asked if he pitied us. He said no. He said respecting neighbors meant ensuring they survived, that we were not enemies or strangers, but people sharing difficult land." She paused, let the words settle. "Winter 1877, this is when everything changed." Her hand moved to her chest over her heart. "My favorite horse, a paint mare I had raised from birth, broke her leg during a hard run. I thought she was lost. Horses with broken legs do not survive. But I could not bring myself to end her suffering immediately." The crowd was listening intently now. Even Enape had stopped his calculating expressions drawn into the story. I brought her to Samuel Crawford. I do not know why. Perhaps because I had nowhere else to turn. Perhaps because something in me trusted him. She looked at Sam then, and the emotion in her eyes was real. He spent 3 hours setting that bone, making a splint from wood and leather. His hands were so careful, so gentle. I watched this small white man work on my massive horse, and I saw something I had not expected. What did you see? Ahiga asked quietly. That size and strength are not the same thing. That gentleness is not weakness. That a man can be small in body, but large in spirit. The words hung in the air, powerful in their simplicity. He refused payment, Nayland continued. I tried to give him pelts, trade, goods, anything. He refused, said he could not let her die, said life was too precious to waste over payment. She turned back to the council. That is when I understood his character. That is when respect became something more. Nalin described the months that followed. More trades, yes, but also conversations. Learning about each other's worlds. Sam teaching her English phrases. Nalin teaching him Apache words. Small exchanges that built into something larger. By spring 1877, Nalin said, I knew that if I ever chose to marry, it would be to a man like this. Someone who valued life, who showed respect without expecting anything in return, who saw me as worthy not despite my size, but because of who I am. She finished and stepped back beside Sam. Her testimony had been masterful, detailed enough to be convincing, emotional enough to move hearts, grounded in just enough truth to withstand scrutiny. Now it was Sam's turn. He stepped forward, his legs shaking slightly. He pulled the ledger from his coat, held it up. I keep records, he said, his voice rough but carrying. The Homestead Act requires proof of economic activity. Every trade is documented. He opened the ledger, read from it, in halting Apache he had practiced all afternoon. Spring 1876, 3 deer hides, coffee, sugar, salt. The trade Nalin described. It is written here. He showed the page to Ahiga, who examined it closely. The elder's eyebrows rose slightly. The entry was real. The date matched. Fall 1876, rabbit pelts, the entry is here. Another page shown, another verification. Winter 1877, veterinary work, no charge, written here. The ledger gave their story foundation, made it harder to dismiss as pure invention. Sam closed the book, set it aside. Now came the harder part, the emotional testimony. I lost my wife 3 years ago, he said quietly. The crowd leaned in, straining to hear. Elizabeth, she died of fever. I wrapped her body in her wedding shawl. I buried her, and I thought I buried the part of me that could love. He paused, gathering courage. For 3 years I existed. I worked, I survived, but I did not live. I kept my wife's things in the corner of my house like a shrine. I could not move forward, could not let go. Sam's voice grew stronger. Then Nalin came, not to court me, not with any intention of romance, just to trade. But over time something changed. He looked up at her. She made me remember that life continues, that honoring the dead does not mean joining them in stillness, that Elizabeth would want me to live, not just survive. He reached into his coat, pulled out the cloth-wrapped shawl. The crowd went completely silent. This is Elizabeth's shawl, Sam said. The one I wrapped her in, the one I could not touch for 3 years. He unwrapped it slowly, the fabric catching firelight. Last winter, Nayland visited my ranch. She found me in the grip of deepest grief, unable to move past loss. This was the lie that needed to feel like truth. She asked about this shawl. When I told her its meaning, she asked if she could borrow it. Take it to her shaman for a blessing ceremony, to help Elizabeth's spirit move on, to help mine heal. Sam's hands trembled on the fabric. The emotion was real, even if the story was not. She returned it the next day, told me that Elizabeth's spirit now blessed my future instead of chaining me to the past, that the shawl could be a reminder of love that continues, not love that ended. He held it out toward Nalin. I tried to give it to her, said she keep it as thanks, as reminder that grief can heal. Nayland stepped forward, taking up her part of the story. I kept it for 3 weeks, she said. But it felt wrong. This belonged to his wife, to his past. So I returned it. She looked at Sam. I told him, this shawl belongs with you, but so do I, if you will have me. The moment stretched, Sam and Nalan standing close to the shawl between them, firelight painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Then Sam pulled the bracelet from his pocket. And Nalan gave me this, he said, holding up the woven horsehair bracelet, made from her mare's tail, the horse I saved. A reminder that we saved something together, that we could build something together. He held it up for the council to see. Ahiga took it, examined it closely. The horsehair was clearly old-worn. The weaving showed age. This has been worn, Ahiga observed. Every day since she gave it to me, Sam confirmed. It was a good detail. Believable. The council murmured among themselves. Sam saw some nodding. Others still looked skeptical. Then Chaitin stood. I hear your words, he said. They sound true. They feel true. He stepped closer to the center of the circle. But Enepe is right about one thing. No one has witnessed this courtship. No one has spoken of it before today. How do we know this is not convenient fabrication? Enepe seized the opening immediately. Exactly, and he crowed. I sent a scout to observe them today. He watched them at the ranch. Do you know what he saw? The crowd shifted, waiting. He saw them sitting together building a story, rehearsing testimony, creating details that did not exist before this morning. Damaging words. Sam felt the tide turning Soen. They spent hours preparing, Enepe continued, hours creating this fiction. The scout saw everything. He turned to the crowd. Bring the scout. Let him testify. A young warrior stepped forward from the northern band. He looked uncomfortable, reluctant. Tell them, Enepe commanded. Tell them what you saw. The scout cleared his throat. I watched from the ridge east of the ranch. I saw them enter the house together. Saw them through the window sitting close, talking intently. Enepe smiled triumphantly, but the scout continued, his voice growing stronger. I saw them building their story, yes, going over details, but I also saw something else. He looked at Sam and Nalan. I saw them laugh together, naturally, not forced. I saw the way they moved around each other, comfortable, familiar. I saw the white woman, the neighbor, moving through the house like she belonged there, like she had been there many times. Spaisa, the scout paused. I have watched many people lie. I have watched deception. This was complicated. Yes, they were preparing testimony, but beneath that there was something real. I am not certain it is new. Enepe's face darkened. You were sent to observe, not to interpret. I was sent to report truth, the scout shot back. That is what I am doing. Chaitin stepped between them before Enepe could respond. Enough, he said quietly. I have heard enough. He turned to face Nalan directly. I believe you, he said simply. Enepe's mouth fell open. What you cannot, I can and do, Chaitin replied. His voice was tired but firm. I have seen Nalan fight. I have seen her hunt. I have watched her carry herself with warrior's pride. But standing here next to this man, I see something I have never seen before. What? Enepe demanded. Softness. Hope. The kind of vulnerability that only comes from real feeling. Chaitin's scarred face showed something like sadness. I know what it looks like when someone is trapped, when duty and desire war against each other. I have lived that war myself, and I will not force another to live it. He turned to Ahiga. I withdraw my claim. Let them be together if they choose. The gathering erupted, warriors shouting, elders conferring rapidly. Enepe's face twisted with rage and desperation. No, Enepe's voice cut through the noise. You cannot abandon this. The agreement is binding. The agreement is yours, not mine, Chaitin said coldly. I am done being your tool. Enepe looked around wildly, seeing his carefully constructed plan collapsing. The document is legal, he insisted. You cannot ignore it. Ahiga raised his hand. Silence fell gradually, reluctantly. Let me see that document again, Ahiga said quietly. Enepe hesitated, then handed it over. The old elder examined it closely, running his fingers over the leather, studying the marks. He called another elder over. They whispered together, pointing at specific sections. Ahiga's expression darkened. This document troubles me, he said finally. White Enepe asked, but his voice had lost its confidence. Because I remember the Council of 1868. I was there. I was younger then, not yet an elder, but I was present. He held up the document. I remember discussing possible alliance with the Northern Band. I remember Nalen's father speaking, but I do not remember any marriage promise. Enepe's face went pale. Another elder stood ancient and bent with age. I also remember the old woman said, her voice cracking but clear. I remember that council. Nalen's father died in 1867. He could not have signed this in 1868. The words fell like stones into still water ripples spreading outward. Higa studied the document again, then looked at Enepe with eyes like flint. This document is forgery. The gathering exploded into chaos, warriors surging forward, voices raised in anger and shock. Chaitin's face went from confusion to fury in the space of a heartbeat. You lied to me. Chaitin's voice was deadly quiet. You forged this, made me believe I fought for honor, when I fought for your manipulation. Enepe backed away, hands raised. I did it for your people, for alliance. You needed purpose after your wife died. I gave you purpose. You gave me lease. Chaitin lunged forward. Warriors from both bands moved to restrain him, but his rage was palpable. I traveled here. I threatened war. I tried to force an innocent woman into marriage, all based on your lies. Ehiga's voice cut through the chaos. Enepe will be seized. He will face justice for this deception, for forging sacred documents, for manipulating counsel. Warriors moved immediately, grabbing Enepe's arms. He struggled still, trying to justify. I did what was necessary. The alliance was needed. The Northern Band was dying. The Northern Band will not be saved by dishonor, Ehiga said coldly. He turned to Chaitin, his expression softening. You were deceived, manipulated, that is clear. But alliance between our bands is still possible. Not through forced marriage, but through honest trade. Chaitin, breathing hard, seemed to deflate. The rage drained away, leaving only exhaustion. I am sorry, he said, looking at Nalen. I was pawn in another's game. I never wanted to trap you. I know, Nalen replied quietly. You were trying to save your people. That is understandable. But wrong, Chaitin finished. Wrong method even for right reason. Ehiga raised his hands again, commanding attention. The false document is exposed. Enepe will face consequences. But this leaves us with unresolved question. He looked at Sam and Nalen. Your claim of existing an arrangement, is it true or false? Sam's heart stopped. This was the moment. Confess the lie or continue it. Before he could speak, the oldest woman from the council stood again. I would speak, she said. Ehiga gestured for her to continue. The document was false, she said, her ancient voice carrying a surprising strength. But the claim was made publicly, before this council, before all these witnesses. She pointed at Sam and Nalen. Samuel Crawford declared a promise. Nalen confirmed it. Whether that promise existed before today or began today, it has been spoken in sacred council. It has been witnessed by all assembled, by the spirits, by the earth in scorn. Her eyes were sharp as she continued. If it was lie told to dishonor this council, they must face punishment, both of them. Sam felt ice form in his stomach. But if it was truth, the old woman said, if any part of what they described was real, then they must complete what they started. They must honor the promise they made here. Ehiga nodded slowly, understanding where she was leading. You are saying they must marry, tonight, to prove truth of their claim. Yes, the old woman confirmed. Apache's ceremony does not lie. The spirits witness marriage. If their connection is real, the ceremony will reveal it. If false, the spirits will show us. Sam looked at Nalen. She looked back. This was it. The final test. Marry a woman he barely knew or admit the lie and face punishment. Ehiga turned to them. Samuel Crawford. Nalen. What say you? Will you marry tonight before this council and prove your words true? Or will you confess deception and face consequences? The silence was absolute. Sam could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Nalen's hand find his in the darkness. I consent, Sam said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. If Nalen will have me. Everyone turned to Nalin. She stood tall, proud, her face illuminated by firelight. When I walked into that council this morning, she said clearly, I was trapped, forced toward a future I did not choose. Then this man, this small, brave man, gave me a choice, gave me freedom. She looked down at Sam. I chose his lie because it meant escape. But standing here now, having spent this day with him, learning who he is beneath the fear and the courage, I choose him again. Not for escape, for possibility. She squeezed his hand. I consent, willingly, freely. The old woman nodded, satisfied. Then it is decided. Prepare for ceremony. We marry them tonight under the full moon before all witnesses. Let the spirits judge truth. The gathering erupted again, but this time with purpose. Women moving to help Nalan prepare. Men clearing space for ceremony. Dakota approaching Sam with something like wonder on his face. You are really doing this, Dakota said. I am really doing this, Sam confirmed. Do you love her? Sam was quiet for a moment. Honest. I do not know yet, but I want to find out. That is enough for now. Dakota smiled. Then let me teach you how to marry an Apache woman properly. The preparation happened in stages in separate spaces under the watchful eyes of tradition. Nalin was taken to a tent the women had erected with practiced efficiency. Kiona stayed close, her small hands helping to remove Nalin's warrior garments. Other women brought ceremonial clothes items that had been stored for such occasions. Beadwork that caught firelight. Feathers that spoke of freedom and flight. Paint made from earth and minerals, colors that carried meaning. The eldest woman supervised her gnarled hands, surprisingly gentle, as she mixed the ceremonial paint. White clay for purity, she explained, drawing lines on Nalan's face. Red ochre for life, for blood, for the continuation of our people. Black charcoal for wisdom earned through experience. The patterns she painted were unique, reserved for a warrior bride. They acknowledged Nalan's status, her strength, while also marking this transition into a different kind of partnership. Kiona braided Nalan's long hair, weaving in shells and beads. Her fingers were nimble, her face concentrated. Are you frightened? Kiona asked quietly, meant only for her sister's ears. Terrified, Nalan admitted. Of him, of hoping. I have never let myself truly hope for this. Never thought it possible. What if I am not enough? What if he realizes I am too different, too strange? Kiona's hands paused in their work. She moved around to face Nalan directly. Listen to me, she said fiercely. You have spent your whole life being told you are too much. Too tall, too strong, too everything. But that man out there does not see you as too much. He sees you as exactly right. Tears gathered in Nalen's eyes, threatening to ruin the paint. How do you know? Because I watched his face when you spoke at council. He looked at you like you were the sun, like your height made you magnificent instead of wrong. That is rare, that is precious. The eldest woman, overhearing, added her own wisdom. Marriage is not about being perfect. It is about being willing. Willing to see your partner. Willing to be seen. Willing to build something new instead of defending something old. She stepped back, surveying her work. You are strong enough to fight, strong enough to hunt. Now prove you are strong enough to be vulnerable. Strong enough to let someone stand with you, not behind or ahead, but with. Nalan nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. Outside the tent, in a different space, Sam was receiving his own preparation. Dakota had gathered several men from Nalan's band. They worked efficiently, showing Sam the ceremonial cloth he should wear, teaching him the basics of the ceremony he was about to participate in. You will stand facing east, Dakota explained. East represents new beginnings, the rising sun, fresh starts. When you exchange vows, hold her hands with your left over her right. It symbolizes balance, equality, neither dominant but partnered. You will circle the fire 3 times together, past, present, future. Each circle acknowledges one. Sam tried to absorb it, all his mind racing. Martha arrived, somehow having retrieved Sam's best suit from his ranch. It was worn but clean-pressed with care. You cannot marry in work clothes, she said practically. Elizabeth would never forgive me. The mention of Lizzie's name made Sam's chest tighten. Martha saw and stepped closer. You look terrified, Samuel. I am. Good. Fear means you understand what you are doing, that you are taking this seriously. She held out her hand. In it was a ring, Elizabeth's wedding ring, simple gold, worn smooth. She would want you to have this, to use this. Sam stared at the ring memories flooding through him. Elizabeth's hands smaller than his, the ring catching sunlight as she worked. The way she would twist it absently when thinking. Martha, I cannot. You can and will, Martha said firmly. Lizzie loved you. She wanted you happy. She would be furious if you let grief stop you from living. Sam took the ring with shaking hands. What if I am betraying her memory? You are honoring it, Martha replied, by choosing to live again, by being brave enough to love again. That is what she wanted for you. Sam's eyes filled with tears, the first time he had cried since the funeral. Martha pulled him into a fierce hug. She would be so proud of you, she whispered. When Sam finally composed himself, he found Dakota watching with an expression of quiet respect. You are ready, Dakota said. Not a question, a statement. I am ready, Sam confirmed. The moon had risen full and bright by the time the ceremony began. It hung like a lantern in the sky, casting silver light across the gathered people. The central fire had been built, higher flames reaching toward the stars. Around it, blankets had been arranged in a sacred circle, each placed with precision and care. Drums began, low at first, barely more than heartbeat rhythm. Then building, growing stronger, pulling everyone's attention to the center. Sam stood at the eastern edge of the circle, Dakota beside him for support. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. The suit felt strange after weeks in work clothes. The ring in his pocket was a small weight that felt enormous. Then the crowd parted. Nolan emerged from the women's tent. Sam's breath caught, simply stopped as if his lungs forgot their function. She was magnificent. The ceremonial dress transformed her from warrior to something otherworldly. The beadwork caught firelight and moonlight, both creating the illusion that she wore stars. The paint on her face was both beautiful and fierce, acknowledging who she was without diminishing it. But it was not the dress or the paint that stopped Sam's breath. It was her eyes, the way they found his across the distance. The vulnerability there mixed with hope and fear and courage. The way she walked toward him, each step deliberate, choosing this with every movement. She was 6'3" of strength and power and carefully hidden softness, and she was choosing him. The drums increased their tempo. Nolan crossed the circle, moving through the parted crowd with warrior's grace. When she reached Sam, she stopped. They stood facing each other. The height difference was stark in the firelight. His head reached her shoulders. Her shadow swallowed him completely. It did not matter. Ahiga stepped forward, positioned between them and the fire. The drums quieted to a whisper. We gather to witness the joining of two paths. Ahiga began, his voice carrying across the assembled people. Samuel Crawford of the white settlers, Nayland of the Apache people. Two worlds meeting. Two futures becoming one. He raised his hands to the four directions, speaking prayers in Apache that Sam could not fully understand, but felt in his bones. Fire, Ahiga said, gesturing to the flames, represents transformation. What was two becomes one. What was separate becomes united. He scattered herbs into the fire. They caught with a burst of sweet smoke. Earth, he continued, touching the ground, represents stability, the foundation on which life is built. May your union have roots that go deep. More herbs, more smoke. Sky, he said, raising his hands upward, represents freedom, the space to grow, to change, to become. May your union allow both to soar. The smoke rose, carrying the prayer upward. Water, he finished, sprinkling liquid from a bowl onto the earth, represents life itself, flowing, adapting, essential. May your union bring life to all it touches. The ritual grounding complete, Ahiga turned to Sam and Nolan. Now, exchange your gifts, make physical the promise you speak. Sam reached into his pocket with trembling hands. He pulled out the small carving he had made that afternoon while Nolan was being prepared. A horse carved from oak, details of a paint mare rendered in miniature. I give you this, Sam said, his voice steady despite his nerves, to remember the day we truly met, the day I learned you can save your own in return. Nolan took it with both hands, cradling it gently. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Then she pulled the bracelet from her wrist, the one Dakota had made, the one that had become part of their story. She held it out. I give you this, she said, her voice strong and clear, made from my mare's hair, to bind us not as prisoners but as partners, to remind you that strength comes in many forms. She slipped it onto Sam's wrist. The horsehair was soft against his skin. Ahiga nodded satisfied. Now, speak your vows. Let the spirits hear your promises. Nalin went first. She spoke in Apache, the words flowing with the rhythm of her native tongue. Sam understood perhaps half, but the meaning was clear in her tone, her bearing, the way she looked at him. I choose you with clear eyes and open heart. I will stand with you, not above you. I will protect you as you have protected me. I will honor your past while building our future. Then Sam in English, though he tried to pepper in the Apache words Dakota had taught him. I promise to honor your strength. I promise to earn your trust. I promise to walk beside you wherever the path leads. I promise to see you, all of you, and find it enough. Together they spoke the final vow in both languages, the words tangling and merging. We are two paths becoming one road. Ahiga gestured for them to join hands. Sam reached up, Nalin reached down, their fingers intertwined, left hand over right balance, and equality made physical. Circle the fire, Ahiga commanded, 3 times, past, present, future. Acknowledge each as you walk. They began to circle. The drums picked up again, matching their pace. First circle, past. Sam thought of Elizabeth, of the love he had carried and lost, of the grief that had nearly destroyed him, of the 3 years spent surviving instead of living. He felt Nalin's hand tighten on his, anchoring him to the present. Second circle, present. This moment, this impossible, terrifying, beautiful moment. Standing in a circle of fire and witnesses, binding himself to a woman he barely knew, but was beginning to understand. The fear was real. The hope was real. Both could be true simultaneously. Third circle, future. Unknown and vast and full of possibility. Children maybe, a ranch that thrived instead of merely survived. A life built on truth instead of lies. Or at least on lies that became truth through living them. They completed the third circle and stopped facing each other again. Now, Ahiga said quietly, seal your bond. This was the moment Sam had been both anticipating and dreading. The kiss, the physical acknowledgement of their union. But there was a problem, the height difference. Nalin stood straight, proud. Sam tilted his head back, trying to reach. It was awkward, impossible, a physical reminder of how different they were. The crowd held its breath. Then Nalin did something that made the entire gathering gasp. She knelt. Not on both knees, which would have been submission. On one knee, like a warrior showing respect to a chief. It brought her face level with Sam's. Made them equal in this moment. Sam's eyes widened. He understood the significance. A warrior did not kneel. Ever. It showed weakness, vulnerability. But Nalin was choosing vulnerability. Choosing to make herself smaller in this moment so they could meet as equals. I kneel in choice, she said softly, meant only for him, but caring to the crowd anyway. Not submission, choice. Sam reached out, cupped her painted face gently with both hands. And I rise to meet you, he whispered with bang. They leaned in together. The kiss was soft, at first tentative. Neither of them knew the other well enough to be confident. But then something shifted. Sam's hand slid back into her hair. Nalin's arms came up around his back, strong and gentle. The kiss deepened, became real, became a promise made with bodies instead of words. The night sky exploded. Lightning split the darkness, brilliant and sudden. Thunder rolled across the valley, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The crowd gasped, stumbled back. But the sky was clear. No clouds, no storm. Just lightning from nothing, thunder from silence. The eldest woman's voice rang out. The spirits approved, the ancestors witness, and bless this union. Another crack of lightning. Closer this time. The fire jumped higher as if responding to something unseen. Wind whipped through the circle, swirling around Sam and Nalin, still locked in their kiss. It pulled at their clothes, their hair, but neither broke apart. When they finally separated, breathing hard, the wind died as suddenly as it had come. The lightning stopped. Silence fell. Then the drums began again. Not the ceremonial rhythm from before, but wild, celebratory. The gathered people erupted in cheers and ululations and songs of joy. Sam and Nalin stood still, holding each other as the celebration washed over them. They were married. A movement caught Sam's attention. Chayton was approaching through the crowd. Sam tensed, but Nalin's hand on his arm steadied him. Chayton stopped a respectful distance away. His scarred face showed no anger, only something like peace. I came to offer blessing, Chayton said. An apology. You have nothing to apologize for, Nalin replied. I do. I let myself be manipulated. Let desperation cloud judgment. I tried to force you into a life you did not want. He turned to Sam. You are braver than I knew. Smaller in body perhaps, but larger in spirit. You did what I could not. You chose right action over easy path. Sam did not know what to say. Chayton continued. My people still need alliance, but Ahiga has offered trade agreement, fair exchange instead of forced marriage. I accept gratefully. Ahiga stepped forward, confirming. The northern band will have access to hunting grounds. In exchange, they provide pottery and tools. Both bands benefit. No coercion required. Chayton nodded. Perhaps, he said quietly, looking at Sam and Nayland. Perhaps someday I will find what you have found. When I stop looking for duty and start seeing people. You will, Nolan said with surprising gentleness. When you are ready. Chayton bowed once deeply, then turned and walked back to his people. His band would leave in the morning, alliance secured but without the forced marriage. Enape would remain facing judgment for his forgery and manipulation. As Chayton disappeared into the crowd, the celebration continued. Food appeared, music, dancing. The joy was genuine, the relief palpable. But Sam and Nalin stood apart together in their own space. What now? Nalin asked quietly. Sam looked up at her, this woman who was now his wife. This stranger who was becoming less strange with every moment. Now, he said, we go home, and we figure out how to live together. Nalin smiled. It was small but real. Together, she repeated. I like the sound of that. The crowd parted to let them through. Someone had brought horses. Sam and Nalin mounted, moving with the easy synchronicity of people learning each other's rhythms. As they rode away from the celebration toward Sam's small ranch, toward their new life together, Sam felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Peace, not the peace of resignation or surrender, but the peace of possibility, of a future that might hold joy again. Beside him, Nalin rode tall in proud moonlight, painting her in shades of silver. His wife, his partner, his choice and hers. The lie had become truth. The stranger had become companion. The desperate gamble had become the foundation of something real. And as they rode through the desert night, the full moon lighting their path, Sam allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the best parts of his life were still ahead. Together they rode toward home. The ranch looked different in moonlight, smaller somehow, more vulnerable. Sam and Nayland dismounted in the yard, and for a long moment, neither moved toward the house. The reality of what they had done was settling in. Married, they were married. To each other. Two people who had shared perhaps 10 hours of actual conversation, now bound together by ceremony, and witnesses, and lightning that had split a clear sky. Sam's hands trembled as he unsaddled his horse. Nalin worked on her own mount with the practiced efficiency of someone who had grown up around animals. The silence between them was not uncomfortable exactly, but it carried weight. When both horses were settled in the small corral, Sam finally turned toward the house. Nayland followed. Her height seemed even more pronounced in the confined space of his yard. She had to duck slightly to enter the doorway. Inside, the single room felt impossibly small, and with both of them in it. Sam lit the lamp with hands that would not quite steady. The warm glow filled the space, catching on Nayland's ceremonial dress, making the beadwork sparkle. She stood in the center of the room, looking around, taking in the single bed, the two chairs, the corner where Elizabeth's things still sat untouched, except for the shawl now wrapped carefully and placed on the table. You can have the bed, Sam said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. I will sleep in the barn. Nayland turned to look at him. The paint on her face had smudged slightly during the ride, but her eyes were clear and direct. We are married, she said quietly. People will expect us to share the bed. I do not expect anything, Sam replied quickly. This marriage was to save you, to give you choice. I will not take that choice away by demanding things you are not ready to give. Something in Nalin's expression softened. She moved to the bed, sat on the edge. Even sitting, she was nearly as tall as Sam standing. What if I do not want it to be just about saving, she asked. Sam's breath caught. What do you mean, Bao? Today began as a lie, a desperate invention to escape a trap. But somewhere between this morning and now, something changed. She looked down at her hands at the bracelet on her wrist that matched the one on Sam's. I have never been with anyone, she admitted. The vulnerability in those words was profound. I have been rejected so many times that I stopped imagining what it would be like to be chosen, to be wanted. Sam crossed the small room, sat in the chair nearest the bed, close but not crowding. I have been with one person, he said, a wife, and it took time to build what we had, to learn each other, to become comfortable. He met Nalan's eyes. We have time now. We do not need to rush anything. Nalan was quiet for a long moment. Then she began removing the ceremonial jewelry, the shells and beads from her hair, the heavy necklace, each piece set aside carefully. Will you tell me about your daily routine, she asked. Not for the council, not for the story, just because I want to know who you are when no one is watching. Sam smiled despite his nervousness. I wake at dawn. Check on the horses first. They tell you everything you need to know about the coming day by how they behave. He talked about morning chores and fence repairs and the stubborn mule who only worked when he felt like it, about the well that had taken 3 weeks to dig because he kept hitting bedrock, about the satisfaction of watching something grow in soil that fought you for every inch. Nalan listened, occasionally asking questions. Then she began to share about morning hunts when the desert was still cool, about tracking that required patience and observation, about the way her sister sang while preparing food. The conversation found its rhythm, natural, easy. At some point, Nalan moved to wash the paint from her face using the basin Sam provided. Without the ceremonial markings, she looked younger, more uncertain. Sam changed out of his suit into his regular clothes, giving her privacy by turning away. When he turned back, Nalan was sitting on the bed again, wearing a simple shift someone had given her. Her long hair hung loose down her back. I am exhausted, she'd admitted. This has been the longest day of my life. Mine as well, Sam agreed. Will you? She hesitated, then continued. Will you lie down beside me, just to sleep? I do not want to be alone tonight. Sam's heart hammered, but he nodded. He moved to the other side of the bed, lay down on top of the blankets. Nalan lay down as well, still in her shift, also on top of the covers. They faced each other in the lamplight. Her eyes were dark and deep and full of things neither could quite name. Thank you, she said quietly, for giving me a choice today, even if it was built on a lie. The lie became truth, Sam replied, somewhere along the way. Yes, Nalan agreed, it did. She reached out, took his hand. Her large palm enveloped his smaller one completely. They fell asleep like that, holding hands, fully clothed, two strangers learning to become something more. When Sam woke, the sun was already high. He had slept later than he had in years. Nalan was curled around him, her body warm and solid, her breathing deep and even. For a moment, Sam simply lay there, processing the reality of another person in his bed after 3 years of emptiness. Then Nalan stirred. Her eyes opened, found his. For a heartbeat, confusion. Then memory. Then a smile. We are really married, she said. We really are, Sam confirmed. They rose, moved through the morning with careful politeness, learning how to share space. Nalan was fascinated by everything. The cook stove, the way Sam made coffee, the shelves arranged with military precision. You are very organized, she observed. I have to be. If I am not careful with what I have, I will lose it. She understood that. In her world, waste meant death in winter. They worked through that first day together. Sam showed her the ranch, explaining what needed to be done. Nalan helped with strength. He could not match moving fence posts he had struggled with for hours. By evening, they were both exhausted but satisfied. The work had given them purpose, a way to exist together without the pressure of intimacy they were not ready for. That night, they shared the bed again, a little closer than before, a little more comfortable, and so it began. The first month was about learning each other's rhythms and habits, learning how to cook together, which resulted in burned meals and laughter, learning how to argue when they disagreed about methods, then learning how to resolve those arguments. Nalan taught Sam Apache words. He taught her to read English. They traded skills like they had once traded goods, building a language between them that belonged to neither world fully, but to their shared space. The second month brought integration with both communities. They visited the Apache village together. Some were still skeptical, but Dakota and Kiona's support helped. Sam participated in a hunt, was terrible at it, but tried hard enough that the warriors respected the effort. They visited the settler town, faced prejudice from some. Martha's fierce defense and Sam's quiet refusal to be ashamed gradually won over a few. Not all, but enough. Month 3 tested them. A harsh storm damaged the ranch severely. They rebuilt together and Sam realized that Nayland's strength was not just physical. She had a mind for engineering, for solving problems he could not see solutions to. Working beside her, watching her plan and execute, Sam felt something shift in his chest. Respect deepened into admiration. Admiration began to shade into something warmer. Month 4 brought the first real kiss. Not the ceremonial kiss from their wedding, but something spontaneous and genuine. It happened while they were working on the roof. Sam on a ladder, Nolan steadying it from below. He looked down to ask for a tool, and she looked up to hand it to him, and their faces were suddenly close. The kiss was brief, surprised, but real. They both laughed, startled by the naturalness of it. That night, they shared more than just space in the bed. The physical intimacy came slowly, carefully, with patience and gentleness. Nolan's inexperience met Sam's willingness to go slowly, to make sure she felt safe, cherished. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Nolan spoke quietly. "I never knew it could be like that." "Like what?" Sam asked, safe and wild at the same time. Sam pulled her closer, marveling at how her large frame fit against his smaller one. Different sizes, perfect fit. Month 5 brought external threats. A group of settlers from a neighboring ranch led by a man named Thomas Garrett arrived claiming Sam's marriage to an Apache woman invalidated his homestead claim. "Mixed marriages are not legal," Garrett declared. "This land reverts to government control." Nayland's first instinct was to fight. Sam saw her hand move toward the knife she always carried, but he held up a hand, stopping her. "Violence proves his point. We need the law on our side." He had spent weeks researching, knowing this challenge would come. The Homestead Act said nothing about marriage restrictions. Arizona Territory had no anti-miscegenation laws yet. The marriage was legal, whether Garrett liked it or not. Sam presented the documents calmly, Nayland standing beside him. Silent but imposing, Garrett backed down, but the hatred in his eyes promised this was not over. "We will face more of this," Nayland said as they watched him leave. "I know," Sam replied, "but we face it together." Month 6 brought the realization neither had spoken aloud, but both had felt growing. It was evening. Sam was watching Nayland practice with her bow, shooting at targets she had set up in the far field. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. She moved with such grace, such power, such complete confidence in her own body. Sam felt his chest tighten with an emotion he had thought died with Elizabeth. Love. He loved her. Not the same way he had loved his first wife. Different. New, but real and deep and undeniable. Nolan released an arrow, hit the center of her target, then turned and caught him watching. "What?" she called across the distance. Sam crossed the field to her, looked up into her dark eyes. "I love you," he said simply. Nolan froze the bow, lowering slowly. "Say that again." "I love you, Nolan, not because we are married, not because of duty or convenience, because of who you are, because of the way you laugh when you burn dinner, because of how you protect the weak animals in the corral, because of your strength and your gentleness in the way you see the world." Tears gathered in Nolan's eyes. She set down the bow carefully, then knelt on one knee again, bringing herself to his height. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have loved you since the moment you walked into that circle of warriors, for no reason except it was right." They kissed there in the field, the sunset painting them in shades of amber and gold, two people who had started with a lie and built something true. 7 months after the wedding, an unexpected visitor arrived at the ranch. Chayton rode up alone, no warriors, no weapons visible. Sam tensed, but Nayland remained calm. "Let us hear what he has to say," she said. They met him in the yard. Chayton dismounted, and Sam saw immediately that something had changed. The desperation was gone from his face. The exhaustion. He looked almost peaceful. "I came to bring news," Chayton said, "and to offer proper apology." He explained that he had remarried, a woman from his own band, a widow with 2 children. It was an arrangement born of practicality, but kindness had grown between them. "The alliance with your band has saved us," Chayton continued. "The trade agreement Ahiga offered, shared hunting grounds. Our children no longer go hungry. My people survive." I am glad, Nayland said genuinely. Chayton reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a rolled document, a different one than before. I found this among Enepe's belongings, he said. The real document from your father. He unrolled it, showed them. It was similar to the forged one, but the wording was different. If Nolan wishes alliance with the Northern Band, I support her choice. If not, I support her freedom to choose her own path. Nolan's hands trembled as she read it. Her father had never bound her, had always trusted her judgment. Enepe had removed the second part, twisting support into obligation. You were free all along, Chayton said quietly. I am sorry I did not question more carefully. Sorry I let myself be used. Nolan looked at Sam, then back at Chayton. We were all trapped by Enepe's lies, but those lies led me here, to this life, to this man. So perhaps some good came from the deception. Chayton smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face. You found what I hoped to build. Real partnership, real choice. He mounted his horse, prepared to leave. May you have many years together, he called as he rode away. May your children carry both your strengths. As he disappeared over the ridge, Sam felt something shift. The past was truly settled now. The future stretched ahead, open and full of possibility. Children, Nayland said softly. He mentioned children. Sam looked up at her. Would you want that? Yes, she said. Someday, when we are ready. We have time, Sam replied, but it turned out they had less time than they thought. Spring came 1 year after the lie that changed everything. Nayland woke feeling ill for the third morning in a row. Sam wanted to ride for the doctor, but Nayland stopped him. I do not need a doctor, she said. You are sick. I am pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Sam's mind went blank, then exploded with 1,000 thoughts at once. Are you certain Apache women know? Nayland said, her hand moving to her stomach. I have known for a week, but was not sure how to tell you. Sam sat down heavily in the nearest chair. I am going to be a father. And I a mother. Strange is it not? A year ago, I thought I would die alone, unmarried, without children. Now I carry life. Sam stood cross to her, placed his hand over hers on her stomach. What if the child is very tall or very short? What if they do not fit in either world? Then we teach them to make their own space, Nayland said firmly. We teach them that being different is not being wrong. We teach them strength. Sam thought of Elizabeth, of the babies they had lost, of the grief that had nearly destroyed him. I am scared, he admitted. So am I, Nayland replied, but we face it together. That afternoon, they rode to the Apache village to share the news. Kiona squealed with joy, already planning to be the favorite aunt. Dakota clapped Sam on the back so hard he nearly fell over. Ahiga smiled, the expression rare and precious. This child will be a bridge between worlds. Protect them well. Martha, when she heard, cried and laughed at the same time. Lizzie would be so happy for you, she said, hugging Sam fiercely. The months of pregnancy were easier than Sam had feared. Nayland remained strong, active, insisting on continuing her work until Sam finally convinced her to rest more. As her belly grew, Sam found himself talking to it, telling stories to the child who was not yet born, about their mother's courage, about the day he walked into a circle of warriors and told a lie, about how that lie became the truest thing he had ever done. The porch boards creaked, pulling Sam back to the present, back to 1925. Back to being 78 years old with a 16-year-old grandson sitting beside him, eyes wide with wonder. That was your father, old Sam said, gesturing toward the ranch spread out before them, born in spring of 1879, the first child of that marriage. Did grandmother have a hard birth? Little Sam asked. Because she is so tall. Surprisingly easy, old Sam replied. She said Apache women are made for birthing. Your father came into the world strong and loud, already announcing his presence. Was he tall like her? Eventually, he grew to 6'1", tall for the times but not a giant. He had your grandmother's strength and my stubborn refusal to quit. Old Sam shifted in his chair, old bones protesting. We had 4 more children after him, 3 daughters and another son. Your father was the oldest, the one who inherited this ranch when I could no longer work it. And you built all this from that small house. Little Sam gestured at the sprawling ranch, the multiple buildings, the clear signs of prosperity. Slowly, over decades, your grandmother and I worked this land together, expanded gradually. The Apache taught us better water management. We taught them crop rotation. Two worlds learning from each other. Did people accept you eventually? Old Sam was quiet for a moment. Honest. Some did, some never did. Thomas Garrett died hating us. But enough people came around. Enough saw that what we had was real and good. That our children were not mistakes, but blessings. He looked at his grandson. The world is changing, boy. Slower than it should, but changing. When I married your grandmother, mixed marriages were scandalous. Now they are less common, but not unheard of. Progress is slow, but it is real. Did you ever regret it? The lie you told? Every day, old Sam said. Then he smiled. But not because it was wrong, because it was terrifying. Every morning I woke up wondering if I was enough for her, if I could build the life she deserved, if our children would suffer for our choices. But you did it anyway. But I did it anyway, Sam confirmed, because regret for what you do not try is worse than fear of trying. Movement caught his eye. A tall figure emerging from the main house, walking slowly with the aid of a cane, but still imposing. Nayland at 73 was still magnificent. Her hair was white now, her face lined with the years, but her bearing remained proud. She moved like a warrior, still even with age slowing her steps. Grandma? Little Sam jumped up, ran to hug her. She embraced him, and even bent with age, she was still taller than the boy who was already 5'11". Are you filling his head with stories, old man? Nayland called to Sam. Just telling him about the lie. Sam called back. Nayland walked to the porch, settled into the chair beside Sam's with a soft grunt. My knees are not what they were. Nothing is what it was, Sam agreed. She looked at little Sam, studying him with sharp eyes that age had not dimmed. What did you learn from his stories? She asked. Little Sam thought carefully. That courage is not about being fearless. It is about being terrified and doing it anyway. Good, Cowboy, Nayland approved. What else? That love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone worth the imperfection. Sam felt pride swell in his chest. The boy understood. And one more thing, little Sam added, that sometimes a lie can become truth if you live it honestly. Nayland reached across and took Sam's hand. Her large palm still enveloped his smaller one, just as it had on that first night 50 years ago. We built something good, she said quietly. Sam looked out over the ranch. 300 acres now, multiple buildings, corrals full of horses, fields productive through irrigation systems designed by combining Apache knowledge and settler engineering. And family. So much family. Their 5 children had given them 14 grandchildren. Little Sam was the oldest of those. Already there were whispers of great-grandchildren on the way. From a desperate lie told in a circle of warriors, this had grown. This legacy, this proof that different worlds could merge without one destroying the other. We built something true, Sam replied. As the sun descended toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and gold, 3 generations sat together on that porch. Old Sam and old Nayland, hands clasped, bodies worn, but spirits strong. Young Sam learning the stories that would one day be his to tell, and in the distance, the rest of the family gathering for dinner. Children playing in the yard, grandchildren arguing and laughing, the noise and chaos and life that filled every corner of this place. Do you know what your grandmother told me? Old Sam said to his grandson on our first anniversary when I asked if she was happy. What? She said, I am happy because I chose this. Every day I wake up and choose you again. That is what marriage is. Not one choice, but 1,000 choices, all pointing in the same direction. Nayland smiled at the memory. You remember that? I remember everything, Sam said. The sun touched the horizon. The same sun that had witnessed a desperate lie become truth. The same sun that had watched 2 people from different worlds build something new. Tell him the end of the story, Nayland prompted. Sam looked at his grandson. The end, boy, there is no end. We are still living it. Every day is another chapter. But if there was an ending, little Sam pressed, what would it be? Sam thought for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 78 years of 5 decades of marriage, of a lifetime built on the foundation of a single brave moment. The rancher walked into a circle of warriors and told a lie. He claimed a woman he had never spoken to risked everything for a stranger, stepped into danger because it was right. That lie saved her. That lie saved him. But it was never really a lie at all. It was a truth that had not happened yet, a future waiting to become real. and they lived it. Day by day, choice by choice, they lived that truth into existence. From one desperate moment came 50 years of mornings waking beside each other, came 5 children who bridged 2 worlds, came a legacy that will outlive us all. The lie became truth. The stranger became beloved. The desperate gamble became the foundation of everything good in my life. He squeezed Nalin's hand. That is the ending, boy. That from the darkest moment, from the most impossible choice, from a lie told in fear and hope, came the greatest truth I have ever known. Love, family, home, worth every moment of terror, worth every struggle, worth everything. The sun set, the sky blazed with color, and on the porch of Crawford Ranch, 3 generations sat together as the day faded into night. Old Sam closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of Nolan's hand in his, hearing the sounds of family all around, breathing in the desert air he had breathed for 50 years. The lie had become truth, and the truth had become everything.